Today we'll be doing an unboxing of my rear LED third taillight from American Muscle. This is my Spyderco military. I've had this for over 20 years. Love it to death. I really endorse Spyderco knives. Going to be the axial third brake light from American Muscle. Let's see how it looks. Directions. Don't need those. You can tell the weather stripping looks nice. Plugs looks fairly well put together. Molding. We'll see how the LEDs look after I install them. Check them out here in a minute. The reason why I'm doing this video today on a simple third brake light on my Mustang is because I bought the cheapest third light LED brake light that you could buy, and I don't even think I put 10,000 miles on the car and the LEDs went out. And what I want to do today is to show you why finding the polarity first is more important than the whole installation combined, because LEDs are so sensitive. In the directions it tells you to plug these in and hit the brake lights to see if it turns on and off, and if the LED turns on and off, then the plug is in the correct position. But if it's not in the correct position and they don't go off, then the light will not go on, so flip the plug. Well, that's not the correct way to do it. What you need to do is, you need to make sure that these, even though it has a red wire and a black wire, you need to make sure these are wired in correctly, and you need to use the least amount of voltage as possible. So that's why you see people using 9-volt batteries, because it's just enough voltage to light off the LED, but it's not so much to where it's going to shorten the life of the LED if the polarity is incorrect. And with a quick representation of what polarity means on an LED is, right here, the LED works, which means this is the positive and this is the negative side, but there's no markings. If you flip it around, there's no light. So that means if you're putting 12 volts on this in the wrong polarity and you're wondering why it's not working, it's messing up the LED. So you need to make sure you get the polarity right the first time. And yes, you'll turn it on and you'll flip it and it'll work fine, but you've decreased the life of the LED significantly. And something else, whenever you're making your own polarity checker with a 9-volt battery, please look at the battery. And everybody gets it confused, but the large side is the negative and the small side is the positive. So if you flip this and get the polarity wrong from your tester, then you've defeated the entire purpose of trying to find the polarity of the LED. With some LEDs, like this style right here that's meant to go into an old screw type socket connection, you can't really get these wrong. They just go in one way and they're going to work. So you don't have to worry about the polarity on this type. Now I'm going to check and see if the polarity on these are wired as advertised, because there's a possibility that they could have switched the wires inside and they may not be wired up correctly, because you really don't want to put 12 volts on these LEDs if you don't have to. All right, that one's good. Positive, negative. That one's good. Positive and negative. That one's good. Positive and negative. And that one's good. Positive and negative. So we know that the wiring is correct on the third brake light for the LEDs. And I know this may sound, silly being so concerned about the polarity on the LEDs, but I'm having to buy this again. And I went with a more expensive one this time. The one I had before was a $20 one. This is an Axial name brand, and I'll have the link in the description. This is supposed to be a little bit better quality. I tend to try to go with middle of the road when I go in and I buy something and try something online. I try not to go the absolute cheapest. I try to go with something middle of the road. I don't want to spend, $200 or $300 on what's, like a factory Ford third brake light. I'm pretty sure is a couple of $100, even in a junkyard. And when you can get, a brand, something that's LED, it makes a whole world of difference. But just know, if you have all LEDs on your back brake lights and your third brake light, it will not let your torque converter properly lock up. There's a wire coming from the computer that senses the bulbs in your brake lights, and when it doesn't sense any resistance, because it actually sends current through your rear brake lights all the time, it will not let your torque converter lock up, and it also will not let your cruise control work either. So that's why sometimes people will put their rear taillights LEDs and everything will work fine, because these will still have regular traditional bulbs in them, which will show a resistance, because it actually sends a couple, it's like 2 volts. It's very, very light voltage it sends through your brake lights to see if it's telling the computer that your foot is on the brakes or not on the brakes, so it will properly lock up your torque converter if you have a car with automatic. So once you replace the third one and you have all LEDs, you're not going to be able, it's not going to show any resistance. So you're going to have to come up with some kind of resistor in the system for your brake lights, so your computer will tell that you have brake light bulbs in the back. If you don't, all of a sudden your cruise control doesn't work, your torque converter isn't locking up properly, and it's a real pain. It's a real pain. I've got this nice bulb from VLEDs. I'll have a link down in the description where you can get one of these at Amazon. I'll have a link for a blue one like I have, but they have a whole lot more colors than this. You can go to the link, then you can scroll through and find which ones you want. As you can tell from the factory, these bulbs run hot, so I would say to switch them over to the LEDs, but you still need some kind of resistance in the system. So what I ended up doing is I ended up taking out the tail light, because on these tail lights they don't use one of the brake light sockets, and I ended up putting a factory bulb in the socket that's not used on both sides, and I zip tied it and I put it in an area where it wouldn't get too hot, so there will be a resistance in the system, so the torque converter and the cruise control will work. Same thing will happen on F-150s as well. After putting this on the multimeter, it's pretty straightforward. The black wire is negative, green wire is positive. Just make sure that your polarity is correct on these first, so you can plug them in and they'll work the first time without putting all that voltage and amperage to them and shortening their life. And also, whenever you tighten the third brake light down, just tighten it up to where it feels like it's even. Don't over tighten it. The weather stripping will eventually settle. I would take and make sure that it doesn't leak after you put, you go through a storm. Maybe you could, so you can tighten it up a little bit, but don't over tighten them, because you don't want to break the brand new brake light. As you can tell, the brake lights work the first time. Didn't have to switch any of the wires. That's the most important thing, is not having to switch the polarity and possibly taking about half the life off of your LEDs. As you can tell, this is what it looks like on the full tail light, third brake light kit. Spend a little bit extra money. The really cheap LED tail lights, they're not worth it. At least go with middle of the line grade or price LED tail lights or third brake light kits. And thanks for watching, and see you guys later. Thank you everyone for watching, and thank you for those who have joined and subscribed to the Swamp Fox family. If you can give me a thumbs up, comment in the description, I'd really appreciate it. Please look for the links in the description. Become a Patreon member if you want to support the channel. And remember, family and bills come first, always. Find it, fix it before it breaks. And quote, not for me, but remember, you can live in your car, but not drive your house. See you guys next time.